golden. Okay, I have a few chair's remarks, so if you bear with me.
Yeah, you know, but I'm not in better account, but
Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
I'm under the.
Yes, yes. Thank you. I might be going to mention that in a few seconds, Chairman. Okay. Right. First of all, I believe this is Anne Shaw's last meeting. So Anne is going to pastures new in terms of Erin's Green Vale, I believe, and National Transport Director for Irish Transport. Chief Executive. National Transport Authority for Ireland. So we thank Anne for her remarkable and dedicated service to Transport for West Midlands and the West Midlands Combined Authority over the number of years that she has worked here since coming from Birmingham City Council. And I think we should wish her the very best of luck and every success in her new role. I'm sure she'd be brilliant, as she has been brilliant here at Transport for West Midlands and the Combined Authority. So Anne, thank you very much indeed for all your service and good luck. And if you want to ever come back, I'm sure we welcome you with open arms.
Thank you.
Do you want to say anything else?
Not really.
Not really. Okay. So that was the first one. There are likely to be changes to this committee that I have been notified. In terms of Sandwell, I believe that Councillor Danny Millard is being replaced by Councillor Luke Daniels. Councillor Daniels is in the public gallery today as an observer member. We very much welcome his attendance, and I'm sure that once notified by Sandwell, all the necessary paperwork will be undertaken for you to join us at the table. But you're very welcome today. And in terms of Birmingham, I believe that Councillor Lau is likely to be replaced as well. Again, we thank Councillor Lau for his dedicated service, both to this committee and to previous iterations of this committee. It must be, in terms of service, over 20 years on and off, Shannon, and your experience in terms of public transport has been outstanding, and we very much welcome all your contributions to this committee, including recently chairing the air quality Meg. So thank you very much indeed, in case the inevitable happens going forward. So thank you.
If I may,
Yes.
can we be associated with your remarks with Chairman? It will be a sad loss, understanding the personal circumstances and the impossible situation he was put in. Nevertheless, you will be missed, Chairman. There's no doubt on that. Yeah. And I'm delighted that this is a unanimous view of committee. And likewise, can we be associated with your remarks with Anne? Best luck for the future, Anne. Don't be a stranger. I know we always say that, don't we? But really, mean it. Come back and let us know how you're getting on in Ireland. I think that's important. All right.
Thank you very much indeed for those comments, Councillor Nicholas. And in Anne's absence, what I should say is that Sandeep Shingadia has been appointed as Interim Director for Transport for West Midlands. Yes, Sandeep is not able to be with us today because I think he's involved in the peer review.
He's joining us this morning.
He's joining us this morning. Okay, so we will welcome him, but congratulate him on his interim appointment. And the only other thing to say is that I'd like to say thank you to all the members of the ongoing review on the Zebra Task and Finish, chaired by Josh, my Vice Chairman, and I look forward to, as a member of the committee, to seeing the report and a progress review on this task and finish. And I think task and finish groups we probably need to do more of. I think the ring and ride went really well, and thank Catherine Moore for her dedicated efforts on that. And we get a report back under item 7 today, so I won't preempt that. But I think task and finish is being an effective scrutiny tool. Did you want to say anything, John?
Not on that.
No, not on that. Okay, so those are all the chair's remarks, other than the final to remind members that at 1:30 there is a briefing on the transport governance review. And if at all possible, I would urge members to stay for that because it is a very important discussion. And I'd like to seek cross-party consensus on the way forward and how we respond to that review.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that discussion. Can I just inform committee that Councillor Tucker is on his way. Ironically, he says the tram has broken down.
Okay.
Did yesterday as well.
Okay. And timing was almost perfect, Sandy, because we've informed
outside.
yeah, we've informed committee and congratulated you on your new interim role.
Thank you very much.
Yes, well done.
Okay, so yes. And we look forward to your contributions and for us to, in the nicest possible way, scrutinise you over forthcoming sessions. Okay, item 4, minutes. There are 2 minutes. So 4A, minutes, 8th of September. Anyone like to comment on their factual accuracy? Agreed. Item B, minute, 15th of October. Anyone like to comment on their factual accuracy, or are they agreed? Agreed? Okay. Anything arising from either the 8th of September or the 15th of October members would like to raise that are not in the action note? No? Excellent. And fourthly, the action note. Does anyone want to raise any issues from the action note? Councillor Kay.
Thank you. The issue that I raised in the meeting regarding more detail on the red ratings on the Transport for West Midlands project is in the action notes, but it was for a report to myself. I believe that report should go to the committee as a whole, but we may all better understand the red rated items. Thank you.
Okay, could you action that, Lindsay? Thank you. Excellent. Any other action note that members would like to raise? Not seeing anything, so let's move on swiftly to item 5 and David Harris, who's doing a presentation on the local transport plan update, pages 19 through to 36 on your agenda pack.
Morning, everyone. I'm David Harris. I'm Strategy and Place Manager for Transport for West Midlands. Just thought it would be useful to bring back a presentation on the local transport plan, and then so you find out in the later agenda item. We're taking the policy elements forward this Friday, but I thought I'd do a bit of a reset and remind people what the LTP is, what it covers, and what we plan to do next. So the LTP is a statutory plan that the CA, under its duty as the local transport authority for the region, has to develop. It does that in partnership with our metropolitan and constituent local authorities. And so that partnership is really key. It's clearly a key document for making the case for funding. So everything that we do, everything by integrated supplement, point that back to the LTP, that's that golden thread of what we're doing. And it's then critical in terms of that wider policy piece. So we now have a statutory local growth plan. We'll also have a statutory spatial development strategy, and together they sort of form a sort of almost a holy trinity of policy for the region going forward. LTPs, in terms of the Transport Acts, should have both policy elements and an implementation plan element, and I'll come on to how we're taking that forward in a moment. So we've done a lot of work on this LTP to date, and we started off a conversation about change, what we called it back in 2021, where we published a green paper that sort of set out the challenges for transport in the region and what we thought we need transport to do to help us achieve our strategic aims and ambitions. We did a lot of consultation on that, and then we published a draft core strategy, which was then approved back in 2020. We subsequently then also did more work on our big moves, which I'll talk about shortly. We consulted on them in summer 2023, and we reported the outcomes of that consultation to this committee back in summer 2024. We've then gone on to do work looking at what the implementation plans would look like. However, we decided to pause work substantively on the LTP sort of in late 2023, early 2024, because of a number of factors, not least because national politics and policy, things like the plan for drivers that was published by the former Conservative government, but also things that were changing here. So obviously there was then a change of government, a new mayor, and also things around integrated settlement, spatial development strategies, and also the work on bus franchising. At the heart of the new LTP is our sort of logic and theory of change. And essentially what that slide is saying is the things we do, our actions, have an impact. They change people's perceptions and experience of the transport system. And if we do the right things, if we make that transport system safer, more reliable, more convenient, more attractive, more affordable, then that helps us deliver behaviour change. People start making decisions about how they travel for certain things, which then in turn help us do the things that we think need to change for the transport system. So we improve accessibility, we reduce overall levels of traffic, and we electrify the transport system. In turn, that delivers our strategic outcomes. And those strategic outcomes are kind of also a key part of that LTP core strategy. So we talk about our 5 motives for change, and those are born out of the CA's inclusive growth framework. And they sort of simplify that narrative really and set out 5 key things for transport, where transport really enables change and helps us deliver a better West Midlands. So things like sustaining economic success, creating a fairer society, supporting local communities and places, and helping people become more active. And of course, reducing the impact on the environment, including how we decarbonise the transport system. And the core strategy also sets out a vision for travel. And essentially that's what we call a 45-minute region. It's not necessarily being able to get from one side of Coventry to the other side of Wolverhampton, but it is about broadening the amount of things that people can reach from home by public transport or shared mobility on a one-way trip. And that's really key because we've got almost a third of our households in the region that don't have access to a car. And for them, they have half as much ability to access opportunity compared to those people that do have access to a car. That's really important for us to address if we're really serious about inclusive growth. And what we've also said is within that 45-minute region, we then have a series of local connected communities. So this is where you would be able to access the things you need, shops and other services within a resource of walking or cycling distance. And this is where transport can't solve all of our accessibility issues. And transport has to be thought about in terms of spatial planning, where we build things and how we build them. And there's also a role for things like digital connectivity in there as well. And getting things online and not needing to travel for certain journeys. And what we've also set out in that vision is that by 2035, we'd like to aim for 50% of all trips being made in our region to be made by sustainable modes by that date. So we're currently at around 35%. So we've got a bit of a way to go, but we think if we make the right decisions, we invest in the right types of investments, and we get that behaviour change, that's something that we can achieve and see the benefits of. So underneath the core strategy are what we call the big moves, our 6 big moves, and these essentially are thematic policy areas of region-wide transport policy that kind of evolved from and developed from the core strategy principles. And they provide a framework for the sorts of measures and actions that we can take to support delivering LTP. Now, some of them are more framed around, they cover the things that you would expect to see in the transport plan. So talking about our investments, what we want to do around the public transport network and shared mobility. So setting out our priorities for the mass rapid transit network, how we'll manage the highway network, how we'll invest and support more people to walk or cycle and in where appropriate and scoot. But we also talk about how to make sure we have that join up with spatial planning. We talk about a green transport revolution, and that's not just electric vehicles. It's about how we use innovation, make sure that as new technologies and new innovations appear, we're using them in the right way to get the best outcomes for the transport system. But it's also about recognising transport's impact on the environment, but also the environment's increasing impacts on transport and things like climate change and the need to think about climate resilience as we go forward. And a key part of the big moves is behaviour change. And that's not just behaviour change in the traditional sense of encouraging people to think differently about how they travel. It's also for us. It's us understanding users differently, to understand people's needs. Different places and different people across the region have different needs, and we need to continue to improve how we do consultation engagement to understand those things and bring those through into our policies and how we ultimately implement them. The big moves essentially then sort of set the framework for shaping our investment priorities. So they're almost into two categories there. So capital on the left, so investing in things like a mass rapid transit network, maintaining and improving our highway network, so key route network, which carries a lot of the traffic in the region. Investing in things like bus stops, bus stations, interchanges, metro stops. Supporting the shift to zero emission vehicles, and also wider sort of active travel infrastructure. On the right hand side, we talk about revenue investments, so supporting our franchise bus network, things like bus on demand, and other things such as shared mobility, etc., etc. Wrapped around that is also the need to make sure that we manage that transport network in a way that sort of supports some of these things to happen. So that includes how we manage the highways, which primarily is a local authority duty. And across the documents, and some of you have seen this before, we set out how transport will support investment in the major investment corridors that were really set out in the major investment prospectus. You'll also have seen this map a few times, which is our mass rapid transit priorities. Again, that's going to be set out in the moves. The strategic walking and cycling network is also in here, and we're currently doing a piece of work to further inform that through our local cycling walking infrastructure plan. So that will continue to evolve. I talked about consultation engagement, and that's been a really important thing throughout this, and we've done quite a lot of consultation engagement. And as we've gone, we've kind of reflected and learned from some of the things we've been doing to make sure that we can do better. Because we know there are particular groups we weren't reaching, we've gone back, we've tried to evolve our approaches and using new tools such as sort of market segmentation and things to help us better understand users. So the bits that we're taking to board this Friday are essentially what we call the policy elements. And what we've done is we've not changed them substantively, but we have refreshed them just to sort of reflect the political landscape. And they were originally written with a lot of emphasis on post-COVID pandemic impacts. And we've sort of talked a lot about sort of how the transport plan supports those wider strategic objectives. And in doing that, obviously, since it was first developed, things like the growth plan, the spatial development strategy have now emerged. So we tried to make sure that golden thread, how those things sit together, comes through in the documents. And as talked about the target earlier, we've included that as well now. And the LTP will now be branded the Mayor's Transport Plan, Journeys for Everyone, which then reflects the Mayor's priorities in this. So in terms of next steps, the refreshed core strategy big moves documents will go to board this Friday for approval. And then what we will do is we'll take what we're calling the area-based implementation plans to board, out for consultation next summer. And this will allow for work going on around Rosewell and the Transport City Regions development of the pipeline to be fed into that. And then what we're aiming to do is adopt the full LTP, the policy and the implementation elements later in 2026 at board. I'm going to give you a pack in terms of the papers, but these are the recommendations that are going forward this Friday around the LTP. So it's to note the public consultation engagement, to inform the LTP, approve the policy elements, so the core strategy and the big moves, and then to delegate the decision to consult to Executive Director TFWM and Mayor and Met leaders outside of board next summer to go out and do that consultation for the key points. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Right, questions for David. And if you've got a question relating to a particular slide, could you ask David to bring up that particular slide? Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question relates to the plan with the railway, metro, etc., on that particular slide.
The priority rapid transit
That's right.
corridor
Yeah,
slide.
well, that's what I was going to speak about. Yeah. To go back to the map, that's right. Knowing the constitution, how things work within local authorities and being funded from outside for various things to be done, my main concern is the metro, the length of time it's taking to get from Wednesbury to Dudley. I know there's a certain amount of progress made on a very slow basis, but what is concerning me now, looking at this map, is the red bit, and that's the link from Brierley Hill into Stourbridge. Now, where the proposed terminus is in Brierley Hill, due to the topology around that area, how do you use this rapid transport, or is that the correct terminology? Yes. From that point in Brierley Hill into Stourbridge, which route would you be thinking of taking, and what sort of are we talking about one of these very light railway carriages that have been sort of talked about in Dudley as well, the bottom of Castle Hill, which doesn't seem to make a lot of progress down there. So how long it'll take to get that established, I have no idea. But I presume that the transport we're talking about from that particular place will be manufactured there, am I correct? Or just used as a depot, I have no idea at all. But it's moving it from Cottage Street, Brierley Hill to Stourbridge. What route would you be taking to do that, to link it all up?
In short, I don't know. But at the moment, we've got a piece of work going on that's looking at the sort of feasibility of that route and what we can do. So we'll explore the art possible and what those routes can potentially be. Your point about where things will be manufactured, again, I think we're a bit far off from understanding that, but clearly if we could build things locally, that would be great.
Yeah, but that really, Mr. Chairman, to you, that really doesn't answer my question. It's on a map, it looks good on a piece of paper. When it's all linked up, it looks really good, really exciting. But when you come to look at the topology around that particular area, where that terminates in Cottage Street, I can't understand how you can pick up from Cottage Street on the line down to Stourbridge. There is a freight line below, but it isn't part of this scheme.
I totally accept your comments, but as I say, I think that's part of the feasibility work to look at that.
So could I take it, Mr. Chairman? Could I just take it, Mr. Chairman, that this is still open-ended, where the metro should have been there 2 years ago, and then we say get a date this year and a date next year. It's an unknown quantity and an uncertainty when we got to get anything at all.
I think Sandeep would like to add some comments.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Stanley. In terms of the feasibility study that David has referenced, that is exactly trying to pick up all those points, because it is a challenging topography. It also needs to consider where the demand comes from in that corridor. But what we're doing with all of the mass rapid transit corridor studies is looking at the options. What are the options that can be used, both in terms of route options, but also then the mode options. What is the right mode of mass rapid transit that could be used in that location? Now, that piece of work is underway at the moment. We would expect that to be reporting in the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks. So I'm sure we can provide a further update on that headline options assessment piece of work when it has concluded. There has been significant engagement with officers from Dudley on that piece of work to ensure their local input and knowledge is helping to shape some of those things, whether it's around deliverability, where the demand is coming from, what are some of the challenges that need to be addressed. So hopefully that does give you a bit of confidence that there is some proper evidence-based thought going into what those options could be.
Can I just say that I went to Dudley Council to present the annual scrutiny report last week, along with Dan, and a lot of the questions raised by councillors on the scrutiny committee were in regard to that section of the metro from Bridie Hill onwards, from Merry Hill onwards to Bridie Hill and ultimately onto Stourbridge. So there's Dudley councillors on this committee, there's Dudley councillors on their own main scrutiny committee. I think it's a very hot topic and needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. Councillor Nicholas.
Excellent report, thank you very much. It summarises the mayor's transport plan extremely well, and I'm delighted to see identification of the canal network in the West Midlands, particularly Coventry. I chair the advisory group on the authority, and I've been arguing for some time that we need to understand the blue links. So having identified it is excellent. In the same vein, the investment categories, you indicate investment in a mass transit network built around fixed lines for rail and tram. I don't think that goes far enough. If you could give consideration in terms of the recommendations to the combined authority, that you include Sprint and VLR, because they're equally important, particularly bearing in mind the road network is important for transport. We in Coventry keep on saying this, Chair, as a Coventry representative, we pay for 1/7 of Metro, but we're going to get nothing for the foreseeable future of Metro, and VLR is our lifeline. So it's extremely important that that's mentioned. But equally, I believe we should have aspirations for Sprint as well. So I need those pegs to argue back at the ranch. So thank you very much for that.
Sandy?
Yeah, if I may, thanks, Councillor McNicholas. In terms of mass rapid transit, it is a broad definition, which is the full spectrum of light rail through to very light rail and bus rapid transit. So it does cover off all of those, and all the work that I've just referenced around those corridor studies, which are looking at the mass rapid transit priority corridors, does absolutely consider all of those options as we go through it.
You know that, Sandy. I know that. Others who are making decisions might not know that. So it needs to be spelled out.
Okay. Councillor Orton.
Thank you. A number of points if I can. So just turning back to the map that was on screen when Councillor Stanley was speaking. So there's a couple of comments I just make really. Firstly, I think it's disappointing that we haven't got the Sutton Park line on there. That's long been an aspiration of this committee to be able to reopen the line through the park, connecting for the Langley development, but it's going to be 5,000 new houses, which we surely want to be able to get onto a public transport network. I'd agree with John's comments around very light rail. We need to make sure that that's spelled out. I do think that's going to have a really significant role to play. Then just on the Hagley Road area on this map, so you'll know the metro goes down to 5 ways to the Edgbaston Village development. And then we've got a currently undescribed new rapid transit system down. I think we just need to be really clear. That needs to be the metro. The idea that people will get a bus up the Hagley Road, get off at 5 ways, change onto the metro to then go into the city centre is just ridiculous. It won't happen. And you just won't get the benefits if that is not a metro that goes down there. And then the final point is what study and work has been done about the impact on business cases for trying to deliver metro schemes if we first of all run a Sprint bus down that network, because it strikes me that once you put a Sprint bus in, you will never be able to secure the funding to be able to put a metro in, because it will always be a case of, well, there's already something there, which again, I think means we need to be really careful about where we choose to place Sprint buses, because if there is an aspiration to have a metro line down that route in the future, I think it will make it very hard to secure funding for once you put a Sprint bus in. Thank you.
David.
Thank you. In terms of Sutton Park line, it's not in there at the moment. I think the pipeline will continue to be under review, and I suspect with work around things like spatial development strategy ongoing, those questions will again bubble up and we might go round that again. So I suspect that that one won't go away, but it's not on there at the moment. Sandy, do you just want to pick up around the sort of 2 points on Hagley Road?
So, yeah, so again, thanks Councillor Alden. In terms of the work that is being done, I suppose this comes back to making sure that we've got a really solid evidence base as to the right solution for those particular corridors, which will take into account what is already there, but also some of the challenges around deliverability in terms of the land take that is required potentially, but also the demand that comes about from any of those interventions. But the key point is we are trying to build all of these corridor studies from an equal baseline of, we start with a modally agnostic view around what is the ultimate solution and build a very clear evidence base to make the strongest case possible around the business cases. Now, I'll pick up your other point around the sort of differential between intermediate sort of solutions like bus rapid transit versus light rail. Largely, there are some examples of where you can continue to build demand, which then does support a business case for a light rail solution because you have built up further demand, which can't be covered off through the existing mode. Also, it's the treatment of priority and providing that road space, which enables then the delivery of light rail systems to come forwards. But more importantly, I think these are some of the challenges that we are pushing back around the review of the Green Book guidance, where the way that the business cases are structured at the moment, it is quite challenging to do that. What we need to do is focus more on the places that we are trying to create and make sure we can take into account a broader range of benefits for the right sort of intervention to happen. There is also the overall timelines that it takes to deliver light rail schemes, and if things could be done to make that process quicker and easier, including some of the provision around a very light rail technology, that would also help in making a far stronger case from the outset for those type of interventions rather than working on something which is more intermediary as a solution. But those are all some of the thoughts that we're currently working through at the moment. In terms of the Hagley Road corridor studies, again, they are working their way through various sort of evidence reviews and just checking some of the technical aspects of that. But that would start to then give an indication of what is the likely sort of mode that is being sought or being preferred for those particular corridors, and I would expect that in the coming months.
Any supplementary, Councillor Alden? No, Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, mine's with regards to the investment. I know you've mentioned that you'll be improving on bus stops, but I'd also want you to consider the bus shelters. In a lot of these states, you do have bus stops, but without bus shelters. And I think a lot of the elderly is being disadvantaged, where if they're standing by the bus stop and it's raining or windy or bad weather, that we should. I mean, I had to argue that in my estate, you said that I actually represent, it took me 11 months just to get a bus shelter, and I had to use some of my own ward funds. But I don't think you should actually categorise how busy the bus stop is. But we just can't ignore some of the elderly who actually mainly uses the bus stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm batting all these away, so I'm going to pass this one to Pete now.
Rugby player.
No problem. Thank you, Councillor. Your points are understood. We do work on the basis of a criteria for levels of use. That is for the purpose of the fact that there is limited budget available for the 5,000 plus shelters that we have across the region. We do review on a case-by-case basis. So if applications come forward and there is a constant stream under review of those, the criteria generally are minimum use of around 50 passengers per day for an average shelter in order to justify both the investment and the commitment to the location. Sometimes as well, though, despite that, what we do have is challenges with specific locations, curb space or other elements of residential objections to bus shelters. So we have to work all of that through, but your point is noted, and we are looking to invest. And we have also invested in some smaller bus shelters as well, which are easier to be able to put into certain locations where there's difficulty in putting the larger structures too.
Yeah, can I,
Yeah, you can ask a supplementary, but before I call you in, is it's on this point, councillor Hyatt?
Most definitely.
Right, okay, so councillor Singh as a supplementary, then councillor Hyatt.
Chair, so again, I understand that it's a cost and 50 passengers or more in a day. But I think in an estate where there's many elderly residents, we just can't afford to exclude them. And if they do need to. Now, in my estate, the one that I had it took 11 months, was a smaller bus shelter, and it can be provided with and not wide enough pavements. So I think we should really consider the usage and look into the elderly that uses the buses and not have just a bus stop in a particular area. Thank you.
If you could make your point, councillor Hyatt, and then I'll ask the others to respond to both.
I find myself in a similar situation where prior to COVID, there was 50 people using the bus stop. But after COVID, obviously numbers have gone down. The bus stop was taken away, and twice I've tried to ask for the bus stop to be reinstated, but the numbers aren't there. And my point is that if we want to get more people on the buses, we've got to lower the barriers and make it easier for them to use. You know, we've got to be a bit flexible, I think, and put a bus stop there, thinking if there's a bus stop there with seats, more people are going to use it. And maybe we haven't got the money now, but it's certainly something that we need to be flexible on. I mean,
Thank you, councillors. All those points are noted. Firstly, just in response, I'm not aware of the location, but I'm more than happy for the location that you were talking about, councillor Singh. If I can just look at that outside of this, I'm happy to just review that case. To councillor Hyatt's point, there is an element and a degree of flexibility. If a shelter has come out, that is not generally because we have then gone along and reviewed and said now there's less than 50 people, we'll remove a shelter. It's normally because there are very specific requests for a shelter to be removed, which in some cases can be down to elements of antisocial behaviour or challenges or concerns by local residents. So we do work holistically with partner agencies, including the police, the local authority, around those as well. Do you want to come back in?
yes, it was because there was a car accident into the bus shelter, and my primary reason to reinstate it was to make that pavement space safer, like it used to be. Because what happens now is people park on that pavement space, and it's just on the corner, and it's just right on a bend, and the cars getting off and getting on is actually a hazard. There hasn't been any accidents there, but it is absolutely a hazard, and there has nearly been accidents there. And so it was, taken away because of an accident crashing into it. I understand.
And before Pete responds to that,
I just wanted to correct you. I understand all what you're saying about antisocial behaviour, and I agree.
Thanks. Before Pete responds to it, I think there's a more wider point, is that when that happens, do you notify ward councillors that you're not replacing the shelter, but you're putting a bus stop there instead of a shelter? Because if you're not, I think you should be, because we are the eyes and ears as ward councillors of our local communities. And if you are, you've singularly failed to do one in my own ward.
Well, I think it depends. Sorry, Chair and Councillor. I think it very much depends on the specific circumstances and the location. Generally, there is quite robust communication around local councillors, because local councillors are the key point to the whole process around bus shelters. I'm not familiar again with this location, but thank you for the clarification, and I'm more than happy just to go away and just understand and clarify around the particular location, because ordinarily if there's an accident, then we would seek to replace the shelter unless there's any very specific objection. So I will take a look at that specific location and come back directly, if I may, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Councillor Kettle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just looking at the page 28, the WP5 slide, where we highlight the need for improved maintenance on our highways and assets, and I think we need to be proactive in that. Probably all of us witnessed how quickly some road surfaces deteriorate once you've got a hole. it can be almost as big as a football pitch overnight. And I'm joking slightly, but how do we monitor the maintenance, on, especially on our major arterial roads that are frequently bus routes? And also another concept, another aspect of page 28. Congestion now is a significant problem across the whole authority area. Could we not identify 40 points across the area where we have a chance to speed up the time of journeys taken, you know, and say come back over 3 years to say that we've done 40 points strategically across the whole area?
Who would like to take that one?
I will.
Thank you, Anne.
So as colleagues will be aware, TFWM and all of the local highway authority highway officers, some of the directors that look after highways maintenance programmes, who work very collaboratively. We have got a regional evidence base of the deterioration of all highway assets, so in particular the road surface, and we're actually using that data to inform capital investment in resurfacing, wholesale renewals of the highway as well. There's quite a lot of information. It's also pitched into the Rosewell review in terms of increasing the amount of highways maintenance funding that local authorities get as well. Of course, Birmingham with its PFI is not included in that for you, ask Councillor Huxtable, but that means that we've got a good solid evidence base, great collaboration with all the senior highway officers across all of the local authorities, working with TFWM to make sure that we can repair your roads and improve the level or the standards of the highway. That's also important for pedestrians and cyclists, not just car drivers and buses as well. And then in terms of what was the second part of the question? Sorry. Congestion.
Yeah.
The congestion also is looking at increasing more people onto public transport, as David has said. So our target from 35% currently to 50% more people using public transport, walking and cycling should mean less traffic on our roads, which helps with congestion. But then also, as part of the highway asset renewals, is also looking at how we can traffic signals across the whole of the region as well, which will help with better management, more dynamic management and flows of traffic, with also public transport priority in some key locations, again, to encourage more people to use public transport as well. So they're part of the proposals that are coming forward for wider investment in this region that will support both traffic flow for all different kinds of traffic, alongside improving congestion and helping us to deliver against that target as well.
Just an aspect of what you just said, Anne, is there a channel where bus drivers are there daily and they know what's happening on, within hours, don't they, of a serious problem? Is there a channel for, say, bus drivers to report the problems with the road surface?
We actually have National Express up in our regional traffic coordination centre, transport coordination centre up on the 6th floor here. So they are the eyes and ears of what's happening on a day-by-day basis on the network. So they help reporting very quickly any major incidents or any problems on the highway network, which we can then try to resolve, working closely with the local authorities, traffic engineers as well. So they are there, and they also report into us problems where they see big potholes and so on. But we work with your officers who are responsible for highways maintenance as well on those areas.
But do bus drivers have a channel where they can read?
They are in direct radio contact with the officers from National Express who sit here with colleagues in the Regional Transport Coordination Centre on a minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. They are reporting in problems all the time.
Thank you.
Okay. The only other person indicated to speak is Councillor Lau. I would like to ask questions myself. So, Councillor Lau, if you could ask your question.
Thank you, Chair. As no following on this project for all 20 odd years, and we all know that the transport plans are over 20-30 years. And going back to the example of the Hagley Road, it was all planned to run the Metro Line 1 all the way to motorway to stop the traffic on the motorway to driving the city centre, and somehow it was to the funding strains. it had been terminated in the 5 ways or the not living. So now this is your ambitious plan for 10 years. How realistic we are that we can, when we couldn't do things over 20 odd years, we can get them done in the 10 years. And these projects are never on time, never on budget. And also I think I find sometimes this fund waste a lot of money, our time, making these grand plans, and these plans for ourselves, for funding other things, getting to us. And then we go back to this cycle again, like Sandeep saying, we have to go do more consultation. So why we have to keep doing repeating the same thing, stuck in the same circle, when we should want to make a plan, put a lot of hard work, then come with another plan. Then actually we should be sticking to our plan and deliver them.
And just to back up Chairman completely, I've been a victim of the 5W metro route and also the Barfington route, which a lot of work, time and effort and funding went into producing business cases and never saw the light of day.
I can go further back, because when I was at Birmingham City Council, the things that I used to look after was highway proposals from 1917. We're looking at all the dual carriageways and creation of that within Birmingham as part of its arterial route network, supporting that growth as well. I think Hagley Road was on there. Well, it was on there as well, and we're still trying to work through the solutions. Obviously, over time, things change as policy changes as well. So where we were building from 1917, we were building for the advent of the car. We're now trying to build for improving public transport for the very reason that David said around inclusivity for those people who don't have access to a car, but also to get more people travelling sustainably with public transport proposals and improving that and using the road space differently in order to facilitate that as well. I think all of that work that's been done on the previous studies, none of it is lost. It all gets fed into new and improved studies where policies might be changing or funding regimes might be changing as well. So the 5 Ws is still in the evidence base that Sandeep references when he's looking at some of those corridor studies, amongst other things as well. And I think the other thing that has changed in the last 10 years is how we are funded. So we've gone from having to bid as a region or as a local authority, scheme by scheme, for central funding from government in order to deliver against these things as well. There's since been a change through devolution. Transforming city regions was probably the biggest one, and then following that, CRSTS and the new TCR funding. It means that we've now got longer term funding in this region where decisions can be taken locally, which should drive faster delivery. It still takes time to deliver transport schemes, so I don't think things can be done overnight, but it allows us to make local decisions, regional decisions, with funding behind it that allows us to build a programme as opposed to a scheme by scheme as well.
Okay, do you want any supplementary, Chairman? No. Okay, so my questions. Councillor Alden has already picked up on the Sutton Park line, but it's not just, as Councillor Alden rightly said, the Langley development of 5,500 new properties, but the southern bit of the line comes very near the new proposed sports quarter. It also picks up that link through to Walsall via Aldridge. So 2 of the stations, blue dots on the plan, if we could get the plan back up, would be part of that Sutton Park line. And indeed, a motion from Birmingham City Council talked about the funding of the Sutton Park line only last week, and a new station in the Pipe Hayes area, which was given the go-ahead as a motion by the City Council. So it's feeding that in and looking far more strategically. So that's point 1. Point 2 is that on the map, we have identified stations where there is work going on at the moment: Pineapple Road, Kings Heath, Moseley, Willen Hall and Darlaston. But there's no funding for other stations identified on the map. So to be non-parochial, Coventry East and Fowes Hill are on this map, but I don't see any funding proposed for them as part of the Rosewell review yet, nor do I see any funding proposed in the Rosewell review for some of these rapid transit corridors. So, for example, from Hall Green to the High Speed 2 interchange via Solihull Town Centre, whether it be the Hagley Road one that Councillor Alden again referred to. I don't see any funding linked with the Rosewell review to new very light rail. And while understanding that the Rosewell review is merely looking at phase 1 and there's 1.067 billion unallocated in coming to a future board meeting, potentially January. It'd be nice to know about thinking, and of course, as Councillor Stanley and Kettle have raised both today and previously, nothing in terms of either 2C or that link to Stourbridge from Bridey Hill. So if we as a scrutiny committee have been asked to look at things more strategically, linking in the priority rapid transit corridors together with strategic transport funding allocation under the Rosewell review, I think there are still some significant gaps that we need to close that are identified but not funding, because it's all very nice, as someone said, having lines on a map, but the funding has to be there to underpin the investment that will make the map a reality. Thank you.
Just to pick up on that specific point, I think it's worth remembering that the local transport plan is a longer document than the current funding regime. If we didn't include the things that we haven't got funding for, we are then denying ourselves the opportunity to be strategic by thinking 10, 20 or plus years ahead as well. And having it in our plans for longer term proposals will allow us to be focused around whatever comes after TCR as well, and also helps with the continued development of major projects within the current funding, because the capital funding that comes isn't just about delivering schemes, it's also about preparing the next batch of schemes which will be then delivered post 2032, for example. And then it's a case then of prioritising where the investments match against where economic development and housing development, etc., to connect people to opportunity and so on as well. So I think if I would just advise you to think longer term for the LTP and make sure it's future proofed. And I think that, in fact, as I've gone around briefing chief executives and leaders ahead of the board on Friday, that's the question that has come back to me, particularly from Birmingham, is that we must be thinking longer term to make sure that we've got all of our aspirations included within this, so that as other funding becomes available, we are able to sort of take these things across more strategic.
Can I just add to that as well?
You can, but can I just come back first, David?
Sure.
In that on the map, under new stations, under the legend, it says new stations 2023 to 2031, correct? Now that's within the timeframes of TCR and the Rosewell review, because TCR is 27 to 32, as I understand it. So we're saying these new stations should be delivered in exactly the same timeframe as the Rosewell review.
That's stations, but
Yes.
the rest of the mass transit network, it should be extended beyond. And the work that is underway on rail stations, we've got some in delivery, as you know, and there are, I think it's about 7 others, isn't there, Sandeep, of rail stations that are under investigation. It doesn't yet include the Sutton Park line, which is the point that's been raised by Councillor Alden, but it doesn't mean to say that that's not in that future thinking as well.
And indeed, 2 of the new stations we've identified in the 2023 to 2031 would sit alongside the Sutton Park line. But David, you wanted to say something.
Just want to add, I think that the newest stations on here are the ones identified in the West Midlands Rail Investment Strategy. So they're the ones that are supported essentially by the rail industry, and so these others are coming forward from local authorities and ourselves, not necessarily all got the support of the rail industry at the moment. So that's the key difference.
And I know you always put one typo in to make sure that.
I'll make sure you read it.
Yes, good. Moseley, I believe it's Moseley Village and not just Moseley. And that's very important.
Is that a typo?
Sorry?
Is that a typo or just an omission of a word?
You can call it whatever you want. It's not. Okay. It just shows that we're awake still as members of the Okay. As I said, I didn't see anyone else indicating it would be, so.
Can we have a copy of the recommendation?
I'm more than happy
They're
to.
in the pack.
No, okay.
Yeah, Lindsay circulated the board reports to you on Friday, and all of the board reports are in there.
I think what Councillor Nicholas is saying, that the actual recommendation slide is not in the pack.
Correct.
I know, I left that one out.
David.
Is that a typo and an omission?
Stackable effect.
Okay, right, so we move on to Pete's presentation, therefore, which we don't have slides for yet, or do we?
No, the papers, obviously the papers have gone out, and this is a few slides with an explanation and summary of the papers that everybody's got. But after this, more than happy to share and circulate those.
Yeah, I think Lindsay's bringing them around now, but please start, Pete.
Thank you. Right, good morning, everybody. Hopefully the knowledge you seem to have working on this. So
Can you bring the microphone a bit closer?
better. Thank you all. So this is an overview of the operational papers. Just the slide here, just to share what's been set out from a visual format. David has walked through the vision for transport in West Midlands. We've just seen have a discussion on within the papers that were shared on Friday. You also have a paper on transport capital proposals, which ties up some of the key subject matters of the Rosewell review and scheme development and TCR decisions. And the third paper that's been shared with you is around transport operational matters. This does tie in various different subjects. So the format of this, rather than there being several different operational reports going to board, it's agreed that we would try and align those within one single paper. So it covers a few items around bus franchising, bus network and funding, the zero emission bus schemes and the metro fares. All of those, as you can see, that feed into the fourth paper, which is around transport finance, which then summarises all of those areas. So I'm going to pick up quickly around the transport operation. In a brief overview, the first area is around bus franchising itself. There are no decisions going to board around bus franchising in the paper pack for Friday, but it is just setting out an update around the developing bus franchising programme and highlighting since the appointment of our Director of Bus Reform, Natalie Penrose, we've now been working to ensure that there are appropriate resources that are being onboarded within the Combined Authority and Transport for West Midlands to ensure that we can deliver the programme to the timescale as were previously set out to the board in May. The report that's going includes a decision-making forward plan that's just giving some clarity around the key decisions that we anticipate will need to be made between now and delivery of franchising, which the first tranche is scheduled for late 2027. And it's also highlighting an update around a new political oversight group that has been formed and will have its first meeting this week, chaired by the Mayor and also supported by the leaders of 3 of the local authorities. That's designed to ensure that there is political assurance and to make recommendations to the Bus Reform Panel. Receive updates in the Bus Reform Panel, because of course the panel of local authority officers and industrial areas.
Excuse me. Yes. Who will sit on that political oversight?
The political oversight group representatives, I believe, are the leader of Wolverhampton, the leader of Walsall, and the leader of Sandwell. I think ordinarily in the other political oversight groups there have been.
Sorry, it's Birmingham, Sandwell, and Walsall.
Okay, my apologies.
Just on this very point, because I think it's a very important point. It is a group of the Mayor and 3 of the 7 leaders.
That's correct.
What are scrutiny governance arrangements regarding this new political oversight group, if any?
Scrutiny for the oversight group.
Yes.
I would have to defer to colleagues from the government side and on the oversight scrutiny?
So the political oversight group is not a decision-making group. It will be to provide some of the leaders opportunity to work with the mayor and officers within the authority to take forward the programme, and it will feed into the usual liaison that they have with mayor and all leaders as part of that, and we will also feed into the scrutiny committee as part of this as well. So just it's not a decision making, it's a concentration of leaders and the mayor who are then working with all of the other mayors at their regular briefing sessions.
And would I be right in thinking that the relevant member engagement group of TDOS could ask for an update on discussions of this new political oversight group?
I should think that is fine. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Anne.
Chair, if I may.
Yes.
And thank you for getting that understood. Understanding the point you're making, Pete, in terms of who is sitting on that body, I'm a bit concerned that Anne qualified it to the relevant districts rather than the leaders. It implies that there is delegation from those relevant authorities. Now, don't forget, these leaders are very busy people, and they have complained in the past. In fact, they got rid of their respective leads. For example, we used to have Councillor Bird.
Cabinet portfolio role.
That's the word I was looking for. They didn't want. I've got to be careful in how I say things. However, it ended up with the leaders receiving, as a board, all of the transport decision making, rather than having a champion. Are we going to go down the same path? Are we going to be delegated? Is it going to be delegated to somebody else other than the relevant leaders? Or has the practice of the past shown that the leaders are involved, will continue to be involved, and we have continuity? I think Councillor Huxtable's question in terms of scrutiny is well made, and we do need assurances that we can be involved through the appropriate MEG as of right. Thank you.
And Pete?
So in terms of the representation through the making that this is positive discussion prior to in the agenda setting meeting, there is still a proposal that we will ensure that through the MEGs there is adequate oversight, and then the interface between that MEG and what's coming out of the political oversight group will be undertaken. As for the wider proposal in terms of returning to portfolio leads, that's not a current position that's proposed, and my understanding is that the leaders involved in this group will be there to provide the oversight insurance.
And just one final question from me. Will leaders actually be physically present themselves, or will they be sending nominees?
That's the point.
Oversight group.
Yes.
The intention is for leaders to be present, and it's chaired by the mayor, so that's how it's being run, and we are just providing information.
But we could ask about attendance and whether the leaders turn up themselves or send nominees, couldn't we?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And part of the terms of reference is for attendance.
Lucy.
That's all that's intended to go in terms of bus reform. So given the nature of this discussion, what I'll probably do is go through each slide and then pause again each slide before we move between subjects. The next one around transport operations as part of the board report is around bus funding update. Members of this committee will be quite clued up already around the level of importance of the bus services in the region, providing 80% of the region's public transport journeys, and that we have provided in the last 12 months around 245 million passenger trips each year. That's around 96% of pre-COVID levels. The existing bus network support grant, which we've done on previous occasions, iterations comes to an end of 31st of December 2025, so at the end of this calendar year. We have continued to negotiate with operators around next year. We are currently seeking to extend the current arrangements for the funding agreements up to the end of March 2026. That's because we have all of the business cases and funding support in place to do that already, whilst we work closely with government around understanding the funding allocations for 2026-27. But we are already in conversations and negotiations with operators around to extend the network agreements during that time period, particularly now in a transition towards the franchised network, as we've just talked about. The WMCA budget is proposed to continue with the existing tendered bus network budget through 2026-27, covered within the financial report going forward. Therefore, there is no immediate requirement for any specific cuts or reduction in the tendered bus network that's supported by direct authority funds. So any minor changes will take place to any services there in line with access standards. We are increasingly confident that we're going to be in a position to mitigate any risks around January to March 2026. But there does still remain a risk to delivery services beyond April, and that is tied into those discussions directly with government around funding, but also with bus operators around cost and delivery of those services. And I must say that is for the commercial bus services, generally the majority of bus services that are operated directly by our commercial bus operators. The recommendations that are going to board are to seek approval, board approval, continuation of bus network support grant to allow us to put those arrangements in place. Without that, we can't go forward with grants. Subject to receipt of satisfactory reports from the Competent and Markets Authority, which we are required to get to ensure that these are feasible and sustainable, the way that we're delivering them, and also internal process around our business case. It seeks a delegation to the Executive Director of TfWM to approve the full business case, the investment and the provision of the socially necessary bus services. That's the tendered bus services. Just to remind this committee, what would happen without that is then we would start to put standard bus contracts put to combined authority board, which necessarily upon for needing to pass into their direct day-to-day work. And it requires delegated authority to Director of Integrated Transport Services to approve the award of those contracts and the final commercial documentation to meet the same ends. I'll just pause there because there's quite a lot around the bus funding updates and the process that we're undertaking.
Councillor Hunt.
Sorry that we've been given, and I've been looking. I cannot see any indication of how much it's expected to cost us, but there's just a throwaway. It's not a throwaway phrase because I think what you're doing is very good, and I love the transport plan. I should have said that really. That's the context in which I'm saying this. But there's no idea. You know, as long as it's financially viable, we'll pay it over, and it. I mean, it's not dead money, but it's risky money because the cost of bus journeys has all gone up. You know, I witnessed that this morning when someone paid the £5.20 over, for the day saver, and bus fares are going up, and the cost of running the buses is going up. Does that mean that this bus network support grant will also have gone up significantly, or will also has the potential to go up significantly, or does it mean that it will buy less? I'd really love you to unpack it a bit, please, so we understand how it's going and what the implications will be, if that's possible.
Yeah, no problem. And I suppose it is quite deliberate that it's set out in that way, only because this is requiring the approvals from board and then to enable us. But the wider, just in principle, the wider funding envelope is anticipated to be broadly in line with the funding that it's possible for this year, but that forms part of the finance report 4. So we can look in there as well, because it does look at the allocation of funding to support the bus network. So it's expected for 2026-27 to be in line with that. The reason for seeking these approvals now is because we've got to work through those business cases and develop them, because what we don't have is clarity from government that on the level of funding coming from them to support us in this space, nor the negotiations from operators. So the way I'd probably most simply explain it is January to March, we anticipate same services as running now to be running with no challenges to delivering those from April onwards. Whilst there is a risk, if we can negotiate the right outcomes with government and with operators, our objective is to try and seek to deliver a stable bus network as we do now. So to maintain existing services to the levels with only minor service changes where that needs to be. And some of that will be in line with our access standards. So if services just aren't meeting access standards or carrying a minimum level of capacity, then obviously there could be some change to them. Generally, what we're not anticipating is large scale major changes to services on the back of this time period, providing we can negotiate that through. Does that help to explain that?
Let's set the context in a little bit. Thank you.
Okay. But the one thing I should have said to you is if there are any emerging risks about the implications to bus services from April onwards, we have already made the commitment, and I know I've been talking to leaders as we've gone through, we've made the commitment that obviously we will engage with local authority officers, local authority members, and there's at the earliest opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, councillor.
Thanks, Chair. I'll talk to you. When the earliest we have the franchising for the bus services in our area, and what would the impact would be on the funding of the government? What we are putting franchising.
In terms of the franchising, our first wave of franchising, tranche 1, is anticipated to be delivered for October 2027. And I think what we've all identified is the importance of maintaining stability on the existing network. These contracts, when we put them out, are some of the largest contracts that we've awarded through the region. So that it's a big process to put those tenders and those contracts out. So keeping stability on that network is quite important. And therefore, negotiations with government around supporting funding, as well as with local authorities around levy funding, is equally important to try and maintain. We believe that picking up on the point around how we ensure value for money and that we're getting the right outcomes for the funds, and the business case process as well anticipates we do that. And we also have to go through a process of getting that signed off with the Subsidy Advisory Unit of the Competition and Markets Authority to ensure that we have a supportive business case and getting value for money for the services we're driving through.
And just to put some flesh on those bones, tranche 1 October 27 is Walthall, Coventry and North Birmingham, which will incorporate elements of North Solihull as well. Correct, Pete?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Okay, councillor Clements.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Pete, for the presentation. It's good to hear that you're not anticipating any major cuts to the network, because we all know how much people rely on a good extensive bus network. I wanted to ask if this is the appropriate time to ask some questions about ticketing and fares, because obviously, we've still got an ongoing cost of living crisis, and people have seen the 50% increase in bus fares. And certainly from my experience of using buses, there's no short hop fares anymore. Is there any scope to have a discussion with the operators about that kind of fare structure? And is there any scope to look at the best practice from other combined authority areas like Greater Manchester and Liverpool, where they have managed to reduce the standard bus fare down from £3 to say £2.50? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Clements. Yes, we have seen some impacts as a result of the end of the national subsidy, the £2 fare, which has reverted our fares to more like standard commercial fares. We are in discussions with operators around the impacts of top. There have been some limited support for that being introduced in the past. We're discussing around the potential options under the existing partnership arrangements, but we're not in a position, obviously, to force that through. We're still working through deregulation, even as part of the NHAP partnership, but it is part of the discussions. We are also in wider discussion with authorities, particularly through the urban transport group, including Manchester, but also the other metropolitan areas, to see what they are seeing around both bus fares and impacts to bus passengers. So we're working very closely with them. There is proposed to be a fares and payment strategy that will come forward as part of our view and vision to franchise services between 2027 and 2029 in London.
Thank you, Pete. I think Councillor Hyatt's point, because from what she said, the day favour is £5.40.
Yeah. Can I have a supplementary, Chair?
Yes, of course, Councillor Kevin.
Yes, I mean, I'm glad to hear that, Pete, because I think it's it's a shame that we don't have the same kind of tickets like the Greater London one, which allows you to travel for an hour and make multiple changes, and that's very similar to tickets that I'm familiar with from some big French and German cities. I mean, on the lack of a short hop fare, it is quite perverse now, because the £5.20 capped deal is quite good for a day ticket. On Friday, I had to get off an Avanti West Coast train because there was a trespassing incident at International. So I went to went home to Bourneville on the X1 and the 11 instead of having to get a taxi. So that seemed like a very good deal for £5.20. But for going 2 stops up the road, to go and do some shopping in Cotteridge, very close to where I live, if I don't want to carry it back, that cost me £3. So I think that if we want to make buses attractive, we've got to do something to sort out that disparity in short journeys. And then, sorry, Tim, just because I'm on, I should have asked earlier. I noticed that the Bus Services Act has now had royal assent a couple of weeks ago, and I just wondered is there anything that we can take out of that would help us speed up the franchising process? Maybe that's a question that could be answered, in an email or something outside this meeting. But I am quite curious about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those questions, Councillor Clements. One, I will ask officers to send you and the rest of the committee an update on the royal assent of the Bus Services Act and what implications that has in terms of franchising for the Combined Authority. And in terms of your other question, I think fares and strategy, bus fares and strategy, is going to be subject to a future report to this committee, so we could pick some of those issues that you raise up at that particular time. Correct, Anne?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Right.
Thanks.
No one else indicating to speak, so if you could go on to the next slide, please. Pete.
Thank you. The next update is just a short update around electrification. And we know we've been talking about the vision before, reducing carbon emissions and improving air quality are key outcomes of the transport vision. Coventry Electric Bus City, first of all, I will pick up both this and the Zebra scheme. The Coventry Electric Bus City is now around 80% complete, with most commercial services now electric across Coventry. That's all National Express double-decker buses, but also increasingly the vast majority of particularly stagecoach services that mainly travel into Coventry from outside of the city. The original target date for this scheme, which obviously is the first of its kind across the country, was aimed for the end of 2025. So that's for 100% of all services to be completed. We have had to push that back to the end of 2026. That is largely due to the time frame required for us to award the remaining residual tendered bus contracts on the back of the commercial network. Some of this has been impacted by the previous conversation, that is understanding what will remain commercial and what will be tendered. And because we have to award these tendered contracts to operators who will then also go to seek investment into fully electric vehicles, they need a longer term contract commitment than our usual 12 or 24 months that we would award for tenders. This affects both ourselves and Warwickshire County Council, so we've been working very closely with Warwickshire to make sure that they're in the same position. We are also working closely to make sure that we can transition the remainder of the commercial services. They're mainly single deck buses, but the evidence is there in the city for all to see. We've been working very closely with the Department for Transport to make sure that they are clear and supportive of our position, as they and we have taken a lot of learning from this project, particularly around the infrastructure and the electrification, the commitments required to make sure that the depots are fully electrified and can support the numbers of buses to be operating long days across the city. So I just wanted to update members around that one. It's quite an important scheme. It's still a national leading scheme, and is seen by government as a key priority and by ourselves. I'll just mention as well, though, the wider Zebra scheme. So in 2022, you will remember that the Combined Authority Board approved a hydrogen bus project that was promoted by the bus operators in the region, and then using a government grant to bring 124 hydrogen buses to the region. You also know that Birmingham City Council themselves had already procured 20 hydrogen buses that were leased to National Express for a trial operation as well. After evaluation of that scheme, the bus operators concerned withdrew their proposal for hydrogen buses, and which for us created a risk, given that these were awarded from government funds. But we've worked very closely with the Department for Transport to approve a change request to enable a switch to funding to be reallocated to support the delivery of electric buses. And whilst there was an element of funding that had to be returned to the department, we were still in a position to ensure the overall outcome was that we would deliver a higher number of electric buses with a reduced amount of funding, so that by the time the scheme is completed, we'll have delivered 154 additional electric buses against the original proposal of 124 hydrogen buses. We continue to work closely with Birmingham City Council and National Press on the outcomes of the 20 hydrogen. But what this report is then seeking is the endorsement and allocation of an amount of that funding to National Express to support the procurement of a batch of additional electric buses, to note an update on the overall Zebra programme, and to authorise the Executive Director of Transport in consultation with other operators to approve the award of contracts for the provision of subsidised bus services in Coventry, referring back to the Coventry Electric Bus Scheme that I mentioned, and note the revised implementation timetable for the Coventry Electric Bus Programme. The other reason why we are seeking delegation to award those contracts is, again, it would mean tendered bus contracts going back to Combined Authority Board for approval, given that we don't have decision-making powers, it could have previously come here. So rather than those go up there, we're seeking delegated authority. So I'll pause there. That's an update around the electric buses.
Yes. First of all, as a self-confessed transport nerd, I know that ZEBRA stands for Zero Emission Buses for Regional Authorities, but not everyone reading this might know what ZEBRA actually stands for. And indeed, that's, as you well know, Pete, that's caused confusion even at board level as to what ZEBRA stands for.
It has, Councillor, thank you. And yes, although that's set out very clearly within the report, as you say, it's not set out as clearly here. So yes, thank you for that clarification.
And the sixth paragraph says 154 electric buses, but the summary recommendation, paragraph 1, says 130 battery electric buses. What I'm assuming is that it's the purchase of 130 for the wider network plus 24 for the sprint network. 130 plus 24 is the 154. But again, that could be made a bit clearer in terms of the recommendations and the disconnect between the two numbers.
Your assumption is correct, Councillor, and I will just ensure that within the report that is drawn out.
And the element of funding is not insignificant, that as a combined authority that we have had to return to His Majesty's government 13.2 million, I believe, and this was in the board paper in public session, so I'm fully justified in using that figure. And I would once again say we should never again be in that position, and this is why we're doing a pass and finish, to actually have to return money to the government that's been granted for better public transport provision here in the West Midlands. And I do believe that's been returned and that's been used for the purchase of electric buses in another combined authority, which is silver lining, I suppose. But at the end of the day, if we are granted money for transport provision in the West Midlands Combined Authority, every single penny should be spent on public transport, in my opinion, in the West Midlands Combined Authority.
Councillor, I think we all wholeheartedly and 100% totally agree with that. I should just explain to committee members, though, that it was our intention to maintain the risk that we had was that we could have lost 100% of that funding because it was awarded under a competitive programme. And once the the partner withdrew their support for hydrogen, and the risk was that 100% of those monies were required to be returned back to government. Working very closely with government, we managed to mitigate the vast majority of that. So whilst I concur with you that the loss is something we should prevent, I would also share with you, I think, the importance of the arrangements that we sought and the efforts that went into seeking to retain as much of that funding in the region.
And I'm sure that will be adequately reflected in Councillor O'Nien's Task and Finish Group report to a future committee. Councillor McNicholas.
On this particular point.
Okay, Councillor Hyatt, Councillor McNicholas, Councillor Lau, in that order.
It's almost a point of clarification which Councillor Josh O'Nien probably wants to say, because in agreeing to get money for the hydrogen scheme, although we were able to get money for the hydrogen scheme, we wouldn't have got any money to buy more electric buses at that time. That was the requirement at the time. So whilst we were looking, we got money for the hydrogen scheme, being able then to transfer that money to buy electric buses, they are buses that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to have. So by happenstance and skillful managing of the situation, we were able to get buses which otherwise we wouldn't have got funding for. Now, I know this question has been asked and I can't remember the answer, so I do apologise, but where will those battery electric buses end up? Because, you know, we've got the money, we've paid for them, we are going to franchise them. Who do those buses belong to now? Or where will those buses, you know, belong? Who will they belong to?
Yeah, for those 130, they're being procured by National Express, so they'll be allocated into National Express depots. A mixture of depots is where they will be allocated at the moment. We are working through with them the requirements of infrastructure, so the electric infrastructure, as to where they can be placed. So as soon as that's concluded, then we'll be able to be clear where exactly they are going. There is a mixture of locations across the Black Country and Birmingham and Solihull as well, but we'll be able to confirm the exact numbers once we've got the infrastructure clear. It is a really important point when putting electric infrastructure into bus depots is probably one of the bigger challenges in operating electric vehicle fleets, and that's one of the big learnings that we've taken from Coventry Electric Bus City, and now trying to apply that into some of our other facilities, which in some parts of the region are over 100 years old. Is proving a bit of a challenge, but we're working very closely through that.
Thank you.
Councillor McNicholas.
Yeah, I think we've just had an example of the value of scrutiny, because I, for one, by inference, Electric City, the buses were allocated to Coventry. Clearly, that is not the case. So how many buses are allocated to Coventry to meet the needs of the city to become Electric City? And a supplementary, and I've asked this before, John, this aspiration to have all buses in Coventry as electric is not possible. So I don't want a misnomer. And when I say that, I'm looking at the chartered buses. When I see a very dirty diesel guzzling bus that goes to the arena on regular occasions for the match, which really does need to be sorted out. But equally, it's the education contract for schools. Now, if we're going to be Bus City, those ultimately need to be included in this aspiration, because otherwise I don't believe we can call ourselves Electric City. So where are we with that? Is it the intention to take it forward that all buses that operate in Coventry will be electric?
But the specific scheme, Coventry Electric Bus City, which was awarded a dedicated grant, so that's
it's commercial,
a dedicated grant from government for us to work with commercial operators to deliver zero contracted services, contracted or commercial services across the city by the date that we've talked about. There are services that are outside of the provision. It doesn't include coaches, for example, and some of those vehicle types and locations you refer to quite often use coaches. But what this does do is drive a real opportunity for change. It doesn't include funding to deliver any other contracted services, but what we are working with is other operators to try and sort of percolate down. We talked about infrastructure and whether we can be helping with infrastructure to support improvements to other provider services. But this is for bus services within the city of Coventry, and by the end of 2026, we will have delivered 100% of all bus services within Coventry to be fully electric operation that are delivering bus services directly. But we will be working with other providers to try and help support the infrastructure in places. It still will be the first of its kind in the country.
Yeah, the supplementary, John?
I'm quizzical because I think you have to say, Pete, it's all commercial services in the city. Because I know I've had the response back that no, education isn't within this scheme. So there needs to, if we're going to call ourselves Electric City, all services, including education, including the charters, need to be involved in the scheme. Otherwise, it's a misnomer and we cannot call ourselves Electric City. I really want to support all the work, the good works that are being done, but it has to be 100%. And when you say 100%, it's 100% of all commercial services, which I understand. So it's a qualification, but it's a necessary one.
Okay, I think that's a comment rather than a question, but nevertheless a very important comment, which I hope officers will take on board. Councillor Lamb.
Thank you. I want to ask you, what the future for the hydrogen buses? I'm told it was a crazy exercise. We know it's very expensive for the hydrogen when you put it in tank. So would these hydrogen buses be able to convert it to electric buses? And secondly, why Dr. Coventry we are trying to aim for density when clean air and the carbon emergency is tracking is a global issue. So why not a whole of the country to become electric buses, right? And thirdly, the major factor of commercial affairs and even of subsidy for the operators is the cost. The main cost being the cost of fuel and the drivers, I assume. Then now, if you're going to have electric buses, that means that the element of the electric, it costs cheaper than petrol, diesel. So could that be reflected the traveling public that we can ask for reduced fares once we are, when we got all fully electric buses on? And also we can have to make some savings when we are trending for subsidized buses. Can you go for 3 questions, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So the first one, with regards to the existing hydrogen buses. So we're working very closely with Birmingham on the existing hydrogen. Of course, it's a matter of public record that we've seen some challenges, particularly around the pricing of hydrogen fuel. Of course, there have been spikes and movement in different fuel costs, whether that be diesel, electric, and other things over recent years. However, no decision has been made as to the future life operation of those 20 vehicles. They continue to be hydrogen and operate as hydrogen. We have seen some real successes out of the technology provision itself, but then the delivery at scale and the provision and cost of hydrogen has been one of the key challenges. So decisions haven't been made, but we're working closely with them on the future.
And that could be followed up through the air quality meg, potentially?
Absolutely, potentially, yeah. We need to talk to Birmingham City Council about that directly, but absolutely, it is still their work stream to work through, but we're working closely with them on it. On the second point that you raised about the Coventry Electric Bus City, it's worth remembering this was a national government pilot. It was the first of its kind, and it could be argued that Coventry Electric Bus City was the scheme that led to the launch of the then national Zebra scheme that government then put forward. It was a lot of the learnings and workings that we got from working very closely with government on that pilot. So I absolutely take your point. I would argue that some of the national outcomes that have started to emerge since have been on the back of that. So it's great to be able to talk about the Coventry in this region has been core to that and will help drive some of the national intentions forward. In terms of the cost of electric and other things, so increasingly this is a big question for the wider industry, commercial and those authorities that are moving to franchising, in the total life cost of operation and how the cost of electric compares to the cost of diesel. We're starting to see for the first time that tip into a space where the total life cost under electric is slightly improved over the total library diesel. Of course, both of those things, though, are subject to ongoing costs. And actually, one of the challenges for operators and authorities is how we ensure that we can keep future predictable costs of both generation and operation of electric. So we are working on that through the franchising process. What you'll note is that all operators, traditionally very large ones, have hedged their fuel for future time periods. So they buy in advance so that they can be serving fuel. We're trying to get, how do we get that same position around electric so that we can maintain clear costs future operation. But it is starting to reach that tipping point where there's an improvement over diesel.
Mr. Supplementary, Councillor.
Yes, yes, first of all, I say, I've heard from Pete, can the hydro must be retrofitted to run on electricity? And the third question was, can we pass on the benefits of the electricity bus operator savings to the travelling public? So, i.e., reduce fares and less subsidy for us for public services.
So, in terms of the principles of what you say in the first one, is it possible for hydrogen buses to be converted to electric? Yes, it is. So that is a feasible option that can be considered as one way of doing for it. It can be. There's a cost associated with that, but it is possible to do it. Secondly, actually, if there are longer term savings in the operations of network, can these be passed on in different ways? That absolutely is a future possible opportunity, and particularly once there are the network is franchised, and that is a choice to be made. So it's feasible.
Thank you. Councillor Kay and then Councillor Alden.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to nail down Councillor Hyatt's point. Does the combined authority retain legal ownership of the buses, or in the event of a financial restructuring of an operator which might involve a default on debt, would the authority in that situation be free to transfer the buses to another operator without any form of impediment? Thank you.
The points around the ownership, so at the moment all of the schemes have been proposed on the basis that the ownership remains with the operators concerned. However, with the electric vehicles, then the combined authority has been involved in the negotiations, or has been in commercial contractual discussions with the providers to ensure that in the event of any change, particularly franchising as well, and any decision by the combined authority to own fleet, that could pass to us without extra impact or impediment, as you say. That would then leave the authority free to be able to novate those vehicles into other spaces. So provision has been made for it in the event that needs to happen, and in the event of franchising. And there are wider discussions, I should say, coming forward to combined authority board as soon as January and beyond around fleet ownership, because it is assumed within the full franchising assessment that the authority will take ownership of fleet.
You have a supplementary.
I hope that's a yes, because obviously it is actually a prime matter of importance, being aware of the financial difficulties amongst operators. Thank you.
It sounds like a grey issue rather than a black and white issue, which you would expect them to separate. Councillor Alden.
Thank you. Just picking up this issue about the costs of electric buses. Obviously, the Treasury is proposing to introducing pay by mile travelled for electric vehicles. Is that something that's going to likely apply to electric buses? And if it is, have we factored that into the costs?
We don't know if that will apply to electric buses at this stage, so we haven't factored anything in around that. Because it's also worth noting what we do negotiate with government is the fact that there's something called Bus Service Operating Grant, BSOG, that gets paid on traditional fuel duty. Then also we get an element of that associated with electric vehicles as well. So we are of the assumption and mind that if that was coming forward in one space, we would be trying to negotiate that through the BSOG route in another, if that helps.
And quick question, where are these buses manufactured? Are they in the UK?
All of the double-deck buses that have been procured have been manufactured in 2 locations in the UK by Alexander Dennis in Falkirk and Scarborough, and also by Wright Bus in Ballymena, Northern Ireland.
And the 24 single-decker Sprint?
We don't know the answer to that yet. We haven't gone through the procurement process for that, but
I would think I would speak on behalf of the committee saying we would like as far as possible for them to be manufactured in the UK.
and I think one of the key considerations there will be the availability of UK manufacturing for the vehicle type, but absolutely, we are in discussions with all providers around those buses.
Councillor Alden, you have a supplementary.
Well, just picking up on your point, Chair, and I very much echo what Councillor Huxtable said, but also just to say when we're going through that procurement, given I think the answer was we haven't yet, can we just make sure we take into account the events that have happened in Norway this weekend, where they had to remove a load of chips from buses that have been produced abroad. So I think we need to be conscious of those security risks. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, Anne will has just reminded me that obviously the national government procurement rules must be followed at all stages for it to be a legal decision. But I don't think there's any harm in noting the preference of this committee that they are UK manufactured. Okay, and your last slide, please, Pete.
Okay, just conscious of time. This last slide is around metro sustainability and metro fares. So we're aware Metro, Midland Metro Limited, is wholly owned, belongs to the combined authority, set as a separate commercial entity, and then are responsible for operating and maintaining the West Midlands Metro under the shareholder agreement between themselves and ourselves. But if MML wish to implement a fares increase that is above inflation in any way for any fares, they require WMCA board approval to be able to do that. And in this case, MML have put forward an update for across the range of their products, equating to an average ticket cost decrease of around 40 pence per journey, as has already been reported, which works out to be above inflation on some of the ticket types. It's worth noting as well that MML fares increases have been generally they've been below inflation over recent years, which has led to a bit of a disparity between that cost recovery, and as well there has been a significant level of investment highlighted in the report around the network Midland Metro Limited as they open extensions. Although they Metro doesn't benefit from any form of fare cap as we see on buses, it does remain affordable and sustainable due to continued CA subsidy. So there is a level of subsidy that goes into this, but in line with aiming to balance the need for the revenue support payments that are provided in the public service contract, this option aligns with the broader financial sustainability objectives in the long-term viability of Metro. So the board are being asked to approve Metro's proposed fares increases from January 2026 as part of an ongoing investment, recognise the inelastic nature of Metro demand, which indicates there will be minimal impact on patronage from the increase. There's also continued alignment with strategic transport and financial planning, including future network extensions, and support the strategic aim to reduce reliance on public subsidy and increasing fare revenue and aligning with the long-term financial sustainability goals, as the WMCA have been working very closely with government on as well.
Councillor Hyde first, then Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chair. I cannot believe that I read in the fact that Metro fares were considered to be inelastic. And I looked up how you were using the word inelastic, and you were saying that demand is not considered to be sensitive to price change because it depends on how stressed the pocket is of the customer. And that's a variable thing. It's very difficult to predict. What's happened is because possibly to make sure that the demand is there, costs didn't go up the same as inflation. You've now got to pay catch up of 40 pence per journey. It's a lot of money. Can I ask two things? One, that consideration be given to matching inflation just as almost a matter of course. But the second thing is how far are we comparing it with the bus price, the cost of bus fares for the same journey? Because that's you're competing with yourself really with some of the metro and bus journeys. And people just have to go with the cheapest, even though bus takes considerably longer on occasion. you know, and I know people that have had to catch the bus to Birmingham on occasion because it was cheaper than going by the train. You know, all those discussions have gone, you know, taken place. Because I'm not sure that you can blanketly say that metro fares are it's context dependent. And, you know, it looks as if things, you know, people may be more stretched, certainly going through the winter for funding. We don't know really.
Thank you. Points noted. I would say my first response would be that I agree that metro fares full stop are not inelastic. They are any fares are elastic at some point. The sensitivity analysis that's been conducted on this has been around how elastic the implications of this fares change would be, and is deemed to be relatively minimal across the metro network, based on a whole host of indicators. I agree with your point. We do see some sensitivities as well, though, between modal choice around metro bus and rail in some instances. So there has been some comparisons made. We do know that one of our objectives as we go through the next 2 to 3 years, as we move towards a franchise bus network, will be to make sure that there is a review of the bus network alongside the metro network, so that they do help to feed each other and operate as a truly integrated transport system, so that it's not operated based on historical competitive choices only. And so they are being reviewed in terms of the numbers of people affected and impacted. But it's not to say that there isn't an elasticity challenge for metro full stop. It's just it's deemed to be minimal in this instance with this fare change.
Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's 2 points I'd like to raise. I'm travelling on the metro myself. I'm led to believe by the conductors they are losing the jobs. So there'll be no conductors on the metro. If that's the case, how much will we be losing in revenue? And secondly, just on behalf of the conductors, I'd just like to say that if anyone gets on there that refuses to pay, they can have the opportunity of putting them off at the next stop or the stop after, and stop this nonsense of getting on and having a free ride. So if the conductors are going to be removed, what is the participation that you think we would lose in revenue at their loss?
I think Anne is going to answer this one.
A decision was taken by the board, which I think was scrutinised at the time, in the changes under the Buy Before You Board project, which you will see now that there are ticket machines on the stops, and the validators where you can tap a bank card are also in the process of being rolled out on all of the stops, as well as the ability to pay through the My Metro app as well. So we're changing the way in which we collect fares. So you buy before you board rather than the conductor. There are other complaints that the conductor can't take fares when the tram is very busy. They can't walk up and down the tram to take those fares as well. No, within that decision, when the board took that decision, we were under very clear instruction that no member of staff should lose their job. And because the network is expanding, a lot of the conductors are either being trained as drivers, and some of them are already driver conductors. Others are going to be used as revenue protection staff. So they won't be present in every tram, but they will be roaming around in the same way that we have on buses and trains. Revenue inspectors that will be on the network as well, alongside working with our Safe Travel Partnership, transport safety officers, etc. as well. So there will be very clear communication for members of the public on how to buy their ticket before boarding, which is how it happens elsewhere across the country. And no conductor is losing their job. Conductors are being trained into other duties.
Supplementary, Councillor Stanley.
Yeah, very quickly. Let's go back to the days when the metro was first introduced. How would you used to pay in those days? Machines on the stations. Did we get into problems with those? Yes. What did we have to do? Remove them very quickly. And the reason we removed them is to put the conductors on there to do precisely what I've said in the past. Not only, yes, do they add security to passengers on there, but at least, you know what I mean, at least they're there to collect the fares. But you are right, Mrs. Shaw, to be perfectly truthful. It is difficult when you've got 200 people on a full metro system. You know what I mean? For a conductor to watch where they get off, where they're getting on, and how much they pay. I fully agree with that. But I just hope that we'll keep an eye on the revenue, that what we're taking at the moment, you know what I mean? We're not even money out unnecessary.
I take that as a comment rather than as a question, Councillor Stanley. I think that has been duly noted by officers. Councillor Lau.
Okay, I think I want to take the scrutiny of this. Although while this is, we are looking at the loss for conductors, on the issue of the loss revenue or the revenue implications. My concern is safety and security of the passengers. Of the recent events of 2 weeks ago when some met, person kept 10 people, right? And that's, a very shocking incident, and that could happen anyway. So while we can technically deal with the ticketing side, my concern is if there's a medical emergency or some sort of that serious happening in the network, how can we protect the public? Really, we need some sort of security on our transport system, that we don't have that kind of incidents happening on the public transport, particularly on trams and trains. I would say, argue that we need to have some human things, that presence to deal with any medical incidents or even criminal incidents. So I would call on behalf of traveling public that there need to be their safety should be paramount, and I'm asking that we should find a way of getting the provided security in all or tram and rail networks.
Well, before an officer answer, I think that's a very good point that we could make to the board and Midland Metro Limited. As Anne has indicated, the decision has been taken by the board. We are not a decision-making body. They are. We cannot override, obviously, any decision that they have made. But I think it is, I will ask officers to prepare a letter based on your comments that we send to the board, that in the light of recent tragic events, how are we going to ensure the safety of public transport users, especially if it's driver operated only, as opposed to the conductor being on at the moment. Any further comments?
So you will remember that the Safer Travel Partnership published its plan a couple of months ago, where this was picked up in terms of how we're going to make sure through the Safer Travel Partnership security, not just across the tram network, but the whole network as well. So the answers really are within Safer Travel Partnership current delivery plan as well.
Yes. And Lindsay will do it and circulate to all members. Quite keen to move on, so thank you very much for your presentation there, Pete. And if we move on to the item 7, which is the Wing and Ride Task and Finish group. First of all, I mentioned at the beginning, Catherine Moore. She was invaluable in terms of the support given to this Task and Finish group. The authors, can I just point out that right at the beginning, it started under the last municipal year, so thank Councillor Sam Gethin and Councillor Keith Archer for their contribution on this Wing and Ride Task and Finish group, and then for Councillor Stanley stepping in as part of the new municipal year. I think it's an excellent report. This report, I believe, is going to board on Friday. Am I right?
Not really.
Of the task, we're going to submit it to board at some point, so aren't we? The Lindsay?
Yes, Chair. So the recommendations arising from the Task and Finish group have come to this committee for formal approval, and then will be forwarded to Anne Shaw as the director of TFWM to consider and respond back to the committee.
Okay.
Sandy.
It'd be Sandy, granted. Catherine, do you want to say anything on the report?
Yeah,
Thanks so much, Chair. Yeah, hi everyone. The report is quite self-explanatory, but essentially it concludes and documents the work of this task and finish group, which met twice this year. First of all, before the board in June, when we were approving all of the new ring and ride contracts, and then to follow up with some more detailed and specific recommendations for the service. Obviously, always we're bearing in mind to make sure that we are identifying and tackling some operational issues that we have, making sure the service is more financially sustainable and viable. And we based everything on PRIP and user data and collectively agreed some specific service changes that are detailed in the report. We met again in September to refine those details as detailed there in the report. But essentially, we have created, we believe, a simplified service model that will improve fairness, efficiency. We are trying to balance budget constraints with service quality and equity and fairness to all of our customers. And key measures just include some boundary changes, an approach to having a mixed vehicle fleet, which we currently don't have. Some journey equity ideas around maximum number of journeys, just to make the spread more even and take off those edge cases. And then there's a few other items detailed in the report. I won't go into too much detail, but yes, it was a cross-party examination of the service challenges, and it's enabled us to help shape our proposed improvements for when we go live on the 1st of December with our new contracts. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. I would propose that we also send a copy of this report to the Combined Authority Board for their consideration, as well as sending it to Anne and or Sandeep. Any comments from members? Councillor Nicholas, then Councillor Hyatt.
Good report, but can I just reinforce the point you're making and understand the process, because this is a region-wide impact, and I, perhaps like the chair, assumed automatically that it would go for information at least to the Combined Authority. So how was the decision made that it goes to the regional, whatever your title is, Anne?
To me.
And not the Combined Authority? Because it has implications for the future in how we do our business.
Indeed, and I have spoken to it directly at board. I can't remember which meeting it was, but I did give a very brief update on it, and that's why I'm suggesting that we also send it to the board and say this is the conclusion of this task and finish. The government, any comments from Councillor Nicholas?
Only perhaps in general, Chair, in that this committee in undertaking scrutiny reviews and making recommendations can make recommendations to whom ever it may be appropriate. And I think in this instance, they were judged to be appropriate to make those recommendations to the executive director. I mean, if on reflection, this committee's wish would be that those recommendations, or at least a copy of the report, be brought to the attention of the Combined Authority Board.
As well.
There's no reason why that can't happen, but it's a judgment as to who is best placed to implement those. And I think in this instance, that it was thought to be the executive director.
But if I may, Chair.
Yeah.
Understanding the pragmatic response to this, can we be assured that future task and finish groups do ask the question, where does this go?
Absolutely, and I would say that as we're ongoing, that a copy of Councillor O'Nien's task and finish on separate also goes to the board, and that's a standing order.
But the future task and finish group may feel that it's appropriate, that it's fine not to go. Let them have that debate and discussion.
Quite happy to agree to that. Councillor Hyatt.
My instinct is please can it go to anyone that will say yes, yes. Because this has been a long time coming and very much needed, and I've shared these words. Well, Transport for West Midlands to foster further collaboration with community transport groups to explore the feasibility of introducing group bookings. I would say I've been arguing for this for 3 years, since when I was chair of Passenger First, and I can't, because my reason being, and this reflects resident needs. This report absolutely reflects the needs of residents and how can we best meet the needs of our most vulnerable residents. In my ward, there are learning disabled adults who cannot use the Ring and Ride service unless somebody books it for them. It's as simple as that. And having a tutor that can book it for them, when not all of them have got parents that can, or carers that will book it every day. They'll do it once, but they can't go to the other 3 sessions or the other 2 sessions. To have a tutor that used to, because this was a service that used to be available, that could just do a group booking for students that need it, guaranteed bums on seats for Ring and Ride, guaranteed income, and a guaranteed better quality of life for those residents that need it. I am so pleased that it's there, and so pleased to see a report that so well reflects the needs of our residents. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those comments, Councillor Hyatt. So if we can agree recommendations, Dan?
The addition.
Yes, I was going to say that, but Dan wanted to come in first.
Only Catherine. Right. There was a development to the answer I was just giving you a minute ago. She reminded me quite rightly that when Item went to the June Combined Authority Board on the Ring and Ride target operating model, board were cognizant of the work that Task and Finish Group were doing, and as part of those recommendations or the decisions of the board in June, that they delegated to the executive director for TFWM and was authorised to approve all final documentation and award contracts. So it was delegated to her. So I think probably part of that thinking for where these recommendations go, were the Task and Finish recommendations go, were to the person to whom the board delegated those decisions.
But I don't think it does any harm sending a copy of the report to the board at all. So can we agree 1A through to F plus the addition that a copy of this report goes to the board? Agreed?
Agreed.
Excellent. Right, so moving swiftly on, because we're past time, to item agenda 8. And that is member engagement groups. They are as set out in the papers. Do any scrutiny champions want to say anything in terms of any recommendations they wish to be considered by this committee?
I think in my reporting, after that we were we had excellent presentation what is done equality, and as we know, it was the first equality or in charge in London was very controversial. But startlingly, it gave amazing results. Now London, you're compliant now, and I think lesson to be learned from there that it does work. Thank you.
And I think that's a very important point, that we as a Transport for West Midlands Command Authority learn the lessons from where Meg has done a deeper dive into their specific thematic issues. Councillor Hyatt.
Just to flag up, it's not quite apparent from the notes from the Meg, but what we were able to do as a Meg, and what I would recommend all members of TDOS to do by looking at the recording job on, which is, it's a confidential environment in which people can share, insights into the work that they do, and allows us then to have a context in which to view this, the recommendations that are brought before us. But we were able to look, had the privilege of being able to look at the very best practice in this country through seeing of how Manchester does things. And then we were also able to see where we are in our evolution towards being the best that we can be and doing things. A point to note is how long it's taken to get the grant forms changed, because this was something that I was able to flag up a year ago now, and it's taken till now really for that change to take effect. We need to keep an eye on how quickly we deliver sustainable transport projects, particularly, you know, like cycle lanes and how quickly, you know, we start to deliver on what we're expected to do. And so I just ask you to be aware of that.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Hyde, for that. Okay, so thank you as always to all scrutiny champions and the Megs for all the work that they do. Yeah. So item 9, work programme. The work programme A of this committee is set out, and B in terms of the Combined Authority forward plan. What I want to say is that, and I'm looking possibly at Sandeep in particular here, is that if you want this TDOS committee to be more strategic, as I think has been outlined, we need, and specifically, if we want to ask people involved in strategic reviews, such as Richard Rosewell, to come to this committee and talk about what they're recommending, why they're recommending it, what other considerations have they made and considered in terms of recommending for strategic transport, they have to make themselves available to us. And I would say as chair, the briefing after this meeting was supposed to be such a strategic transport review, but if Bridget Rosewell isn't available, that is highly disappointing. And I would urge officers to speak to the relevant people to ensure that we can carry out that strategic function, and to have the right officers to talk to us in detail about future strategy and transport infrastructure projects that we would like to see happen, or if they're not possible, to understand the reasons why they're not being recommended, as well as the ones that are being recommended. And I hope I speak on behalf of the entire committee when I say this on a cross-party basis. So phase 1 of the Rosewell review is going forward on Friday. There will be further tranches, and as I said, if you look at the papers, there's 1.067 billion proposed to come before board in January for consideration. Can you use your best efforts to ensure that Bridget Rosewell does come before this committee, so that all members can actually question her in terms of this?
Thank you, Chair, and absolutely noted. I did try very hard to get Bridget along to the briefing session. Unfortunately, she had a commitment that could not be moved and has been in a diary since we had the discussion around Bridget attending this session following the last meeting. What we will also be doing, and this has been agreed with Bridget and the consultancy team that is supporting her, is to have some drop-in sessions which are being set up for the end of November. So we will keep this committee informed of those dates, and that will make Bridget and the whole team available to go through the project which is set out within the board paper that is going up to board on Friday, but also then the next steps in terms of the information gathering and the engagement that they have had with all of the local authorities and our own TFWM colleagues over the past month or so.
Thank you very much. And just as a helpful start of the 10, that all members may comment during David's excellent presentation as to transport infrastructure that they would like to see, whether it's proposed in the plan or whether it's not yet proposed. So if we could give her a précis of that as a start of 10, but I'm sure members may want to raise many other issues. Councillor Kay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to propose a new item for the work programme based on the question that I asked to the Mayor, and the Mayor responded that there was a lot to agree with in my question. And it's on the subject of investment cases where I believe there are 4 matters of concern. First of all, business cases do not contain an assessment of the economic damage of projects in progress. Often projects go over a matter of years, which create a lot of disruption to local businesses and the public. And no account of that damage is included in investment reports. Going on from that, there seem to be no mechanisms for preventing projects going beyond their timescales and the continuing damage to businesses where projects don't complete on time. The third matter of concern I have is that there are no environmental impact assessments where if roads, for example, go through ancient woodlands or wetlands, there seems to be no mitigation where, for example, pond life might be moved to an alternative pond. And the fourth concern is that there is no assessment of climate change impact where there is carbon emissions involved in supplying, manufacturing and supplying of materials, and of course the engines of the construction plant while they're doing things. I believe that this board should consider a report on investment cases with a view to making recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. That will be given due consideration. I personally, I think that sounds more like a briefing by the relevant officers rather than a report on the formal part of the agenda. But we will seriously consider that, and I will speak to officers from governance. Any other comments on the work programme? If not, then item 10, the date of the next meeting. The next formal meeting is a joint mayoral Q&A on the draft budget on Wednesday, the 17th of December at 10 o'clock. And the next formal meeting of this committee is on Monday, the 12th of January at 11 o'clock. But there will be an informal mayoral Q&A session on the 1st of December, if I recall correctly, Lindsay.
Yes, Chair. So there'll be a members workshop on the 1st of December where you'll have an opportunity to go through the draft budget with Louise and also discuss any potential areas or lines of inquiry for the Mayor.
Okay, so with that, I will formally close the meeting. Don't forget the briefing at 1:30. It is an important briefing. And if I don't see you beforehand, I will see you at one of the meetings in December. Thank you all very much.
Oh, very good.
Thanks very much. Bye, everyone.
I'll say that's September.
Yeah.
He's